And
Right.
so I wasn't able to land something. It took me a very long time. Eventually landed an IT recruiting position here in Atlanta. Uh, Grew up through the ranks of that, became leaders of those teams, started divisions, things like that. But really what happened was I learned in that role, my eyes were open to the kind of money that people were making in IT. And when I say people, I'm not talking about just some people. I mean, everybody that was in IT at any kind of medium level and up, they were making money to the tune of $70, $100, $150, $200 an hour. And that blew my mind. I just wasn't used to seeing that kind of, that level of income. And what it did was it normalized high earning salaries for me, to the point where I began to ask myself the question, well, wait a minute. If I'm constantly hiring people who have these skill sets that these companies are willing to pay a lot, why don't I just get one of those skill sets? Why don't I acquire that information? So what I did was I did some research, learned about Salesforce. I took a class for 3 months. At the end of that class, I got certified. Within 3 months of being certified, I had my first position, my first, I'll share some numbers here. My first Salesforce job, I was making 130K. Since then, I've gone on to over double that. But the point is, you can't, the numbers they're all relative, right? So 130K may be a whole lot to some people. It may not be much for other people. But the point is, when you get that skill set, it doesn't take you 5 years. It doesn't take you, 10 years. You learn the information. We can do it in as short as 3 months. You can do it faster if you're a fast learner. And then you learn how to market yourself and leverage your current experience that you already have, coupled with what you just learned from a Salesforce perspective. And that catapults you to a whole nother dimension in terms of your earning potential. So that's what we teach, and that's what we do. And it's not theoretical for me, right? This is exactly my life. I reinvented my whole self by learning a skill set that was highly marketable. And now multiple companies rely on me to provide that skill set on a global level. And again, the income just matches what you're able to provide from a skill set standpoint.
So you were a recruiter?
Oh, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. I just want to hear a little bit of it.
Yeah. So
don't give us the horror stories, but give them to us.
Yeah, it was that was eye-opening. You don't know what you don't know. Here you are submitting resumes to companies and spitting out resumes, and how come nobody's calling me and nobody's getting me a job? And
right.
And what I learned was that in recruiting, there's a whole industry. They don't work for you. They don't work for you as a job seeker. They are working for companies who pay them a lot of money to find talent. Okay. So when you call a recruiter and you're like, hey, can you help me find a job? They'll tell you, yes, they can. But really, that's not what they do. Unless you have some kind of very, very unique skill set that no one else has. And then at that point, you're highly marketable, because they can take your skill set and market you to companies that they know need that skill. But if you are just kind of a regular average Joe, run of the mill, no differentiated skills, you're one in a million, and they are working with a million of you. And so that's the reality. And so what I learned, and once I got to the point where I was developing teams, is I would have my recruiters specialize in technology. So I would have a recruiter that was only recruiting Salesforce talent, a recruiter that was only recruiting business intelligence talent, a recruiter that's only recruiting all these different skill sets, cybersecurity. And they would get to know the people who had the skills, not just the skills, but also the personalities and the business acumen and things like that. And those are the people that we go to market with. Those are the people that we say, hey, Coca-Cola, we have this particular person that we just came in touch with, and this is their salary, and this is their rate, and this is what they're looking for, and this is what they'll do. But it was always on the talent's terms, right? If you're good, once you get to a point where you're good, you set your terms, right? Where you'll work, what you'll work for, the amount of money you'll work for, when you'll work, all that kind of stuff. And so that's what I learned. I learned a ton in the industry, and those are some of the things I learned.
The big thing I wanted to touch on it with you about recruiting before we move on is, I told people updating that LinkedIn matters. I
Oh,
meet so many people who don't even have LinkedIn. And then if they do, they got a picture from 1994 barbecue up there with the Q Dog shirt on. And I'm like,
yeah,
what are you doing?
yeah,
What are you
yeah.
doing? This
This
ain't
is
Facebook. This is different.
this is factual. So I was in the industry when LinkedIn was a baby, and they were
Hmm.
coming around to all of the recruiting firms and saying, "Hey, we're LinkedIn," and we laughed at them like, "Aha, whatever." Career Builder. These
Yep.
job boards. These
Hmm.
are the ways that we're going to get our candidates. And lo and behold, they took off like wildfire. And so you think of LinkedIn as kind of the Facebook of business, if you will. And the reality is, if you're not on LinkedIn, you are not in the job search game. That's just period.
You guys,
If you're
period.
not on LinkedIn, you're not in the job search game. And I'll say it like this: when I'm ready to look for a new opportunity or position, I don't go distributing my resume to job boards. Now, I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying I've been doing this a while now, so I know how to getting a job as a skill itself. And so when you know the skill, you know how to get it. If I want a job, I'll get one. And right now it's to the point where I just open up my LinkedIn inbox and choose who I want to respond to.
Facts.
Right. And then I call them or they call me and we have a conversation. And if it makes sense, we go with it. But that's only because I'm marketing myself a particular way within a niche, within a skill set, with a technology that is very much in demand. So yeah, if you're not on LinkedIn, and I'll tell you from a recruiting standpoint, the very first thing we do after we see a resume that we like is we look the person up on LinkedIn. We look
Did
them
y'all
up on
hear
LinkedIn.
that? Did y'all hear that?
And if they're not on LinkedIn, we don't think they're serious about their career. And it just is what it is. If you're not on LinkedIn, this person is a worker. They're not serious about their career. They're not thinking ahead. Now, is that I'm just letting you know that's how they think. Right, wrong, or indifferent. It's how it works. So
Listen, y'all. Recruiter questions, bring them, but I just wanted him to touch on that because a lot
yeah,
of times I get a little pushback from the LinkedIn conversation, and I'm like, I still get messages on there for property management. I haven't been in
yeah,
property management in 6 years, y'all.
yeah, yeah.
So they're looking based off what you put up there. And so I told him, I think I told Sub this. I was like, I'm gonna put A plus up there. I'm just gonna put that. I'm certified in a bunch of stuff. See what happens. He like,
Hmm.
stop playing. But I just said,
Yeah,
I see what my phone start ringing.
yeah.
I
I'll give
almost
you.
think people should have a separate phone because some of y'all be acting up on these phones. So
I'll give you another little tip as it relates to the recruiting and resume building and things like that. Just in terms of, again, getting a job as a skill set. One of the biggest misunderstandings about resumes is that they need to be as short as possible and as creative as possible. And the reality is nobody's reading these resumes. And I look at Instagram resume gurus all the time, and they're telling you use this word instead of that word and this and that and this. And that's awesome. But the reality is these algorithms are reading these resumes. And so if I'm looking for a objective C developer and I type that into my searches, it's going to pull back the resumes with the most objective C, the words, the keywords that I've
mhm.
typed in the resume. So the counterintuitive thing is that if you want your resume to, when we Google things, right? How many times do we Google something? And if we don't see what we're looking for on the first page, how many times do we go to that second page, third page, fourth page? If you're like me, you don't, right? If I don't see what I'm looking for on that first page, I usually rework my search, whatever I'm searching for. I'm
Bingo.
not going to the second and third. Well, the
Not going
same
to
is
page 7.
right. I'm not hitting that all those O's down there. No. And so with resume and recruiting and resume searches, it's the same thing. If I'm looking for something and I don't see it immediately on that first page, I'm tweaking my search. And you know who pops up on the first page? The people who have the redundant keywords in their resume over and over and over again. And so it pays off for your resume to be as long as possible and as redundant as possible if you want to get calls from recruiters about job opportunities. And that's counterintuitive. You don't hear that a lot. Everybody tells you the opposite, but I'm telling you, most of those people have not been in recruiting and have not made a living off of getting people opportunities. And so
This
that's
is
something
why I
that's
brought this brother in here. This is why I brought him in, Erica, because he's a dynamo. So yeah, but I didn't know that. I was always told that too, and I've been doing this for 10, 12, 13 years. I still didn't know. I didn't know that
yeah,
till you said it. Hey, well, dang, that
yeah.
makes sense. I
In
didn't know
IT,
that. And so this
yeah,
is the type of stuff that you have, because you'll be learning from not only a developer, but a recruiter who can make you, and we hadn't even gotten into how he's going to help the students, because that's a whole nother thing he's going to talk about. But it's just coming to this course, you'll be able to learn the skills. He'll be able to break it down very simplistic, but then you'll also be able to learn, hey, I remember I was on a project, and this is what I help my students with. When you go, don't do this, don't do that, you will get fired. I got fired, right? I got escorted out the building because I did X, Y, and Z.
yeah,
Don't do that, And so what happens is you get out there already with a level of knowledge. I've only had, out of all the students I've had get jobs, and this is with my skill set, I've only had maybe 3 to 4 terminations. Students, I mean, most of these students, they either work their project all the way through,
Mhm.
and then the project ends, or they
they
wind up
keep getting
staying.
extended. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's a good thing. Saying a lot of my students, and some of them, they work it to the end. They may call me frustrated. I'm like, hey, they didn't let you go, which means you weren't competent enough to remain in there. If you weren't competent, they would have got you out of there in, like, 2 weeks. They would have got you out of there. And
Right.
so
And in
you
tech,
you
there's movement, right? A lot of times I see guys moving all the time. They're moving laterally inside the same building. They're like, there's NI here. And I've seen people be like I'll be on Facebook and they'll be like, position changed like every couple of months. Like that's not
yeah.
uncommon.
Well,
yeah,
and
that just
that's
happened. That just happened. I just got an offer, not an offer, but they're talking to me, trying to get me to do it. I just like where I'm at, but
Hmm.
they want me to move at my main position. I have more than, well, I had more than one. I'm back to one now. I'm interviewing for the second one, but that's what I'm saying. And the main job that I have, they wanted me to move because my manager moved, and everybody likes him, so they telling us to, hey, we want you guys to move into this or that, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, no, I'm staying right where I'm at. I like I like what I do. I like it. I understand it. And moving into other departments, I just didn't feel like that's what I want to do. But you can, if you want to move up, you want to say, you know what, they're paying me 110. This position is they'll have a ranking within these organizations, and they say, okay, this position is not a lateral. This is 2 steps up. So now you're talking 140, something like, that's literally how they do in these organizations. And if you do move laterally, it'll have a ranking. But rarely will you move in a position and they take your money down. It's usually you move to the side or you move up.
Because they
So
know
it's
you'll leave.
well,
exactly.
and I'll tell you this, right? So if we're talking about maximizing earning potential, in IT, you don't stay at a company. The average IT person stays at a company 2.5 years, and then they're out. And for some parts of IT, it's even less than that. And the reason is there's a number of reasons for it. Sometimes a lot of IT is project based, right? So it's you're there to solve a specific problem. And once that problem is solved, it's thank you and you move on. Other times, um, you don't want to stay at a company too long in IT, because think about it, that company is invested in a particular technology and the world is right. And so that company, if you stay too long, your skills are going to become a little antiquated. And so you want to keep moving. And then the other benefit to changing jobs more frequently is that typically from a salary perspective, you're going to get a 3 to 5% annual increase. And if you get 5%, you're winning, right? And if you think about it, that's really not a lot of money. It's a couple $100 a month, or whatever. It's not going to change your life, okay? But when you change companies to do the very same thing, many times you're able to negotiate 20% more than what you're making right now, right? Just by changing companies. And so you go get a new job and you're able to get, my first time getting into Salesforce, the job increase was a 40% increase than what I was making. Then again, and I told you guys and yes, WHTMT, yes, I did say that. And that's not arrogantly or any braggadocious or anything like that. That's the reality. And that was the shock, similar shock to what I was experiencing as an IT recruiter. I'm like, wait, people make this kind of money, right? Like a lot of people make this kind of money. Granted, not the majority of people, but definitely a lot of people. And I'll tell you, I'll give you one little anecdote. I told this on another video I was on a couple weeks ago on Sub's channel. It really hit home for me when when iPhone development was just starting. iPhones were starting to pop. Everybody was started to look for an iPhone app developer, and Coca-Cola called me and they said, Sean, we want an iPhone app developer. We're like, what is that? We didn't really understand what it was at the time. This is years ago. And so we went to searching and we couldn't find anybody with iPhone app development on their resume, because who would have experience in a burgeoning technology that nobody has experience in yet? Well, I eventually found a 17-year-old kid in high school on MySpace or Facebook. I can't even remember where I found the person. And I just called him. I had messaged him or called him or whatever, and just had a conversation with him. Come to find out, the kid's been dabbling in it. He's been playing in it, and he understood he understood. He had the skill set. And I told him about the opportunity, and his response was, well, I don't know. I'm still in school. I got to ask my dad. So the funny thing is, we got on the phone with his dad, talked about it, and this kid, Coca-Cola hired this kid as a 17-year-old for $150 an hour. That's the equivalent of $300,000 a year. We're talking about a kid in school who had a skill set that a company needed and nobody else had. And the reality is, he could have asked for $200 an hour, and they would have paid him because they wanted to be on the cutting edge of this technology. The point is, again, I'm driving home. Get a skill set that companies need. Once you have that, the sky is open to you, and salaries like I'm talking about won't be uncommon. They're not uncommon. They are very common.
So part of something a recruiter said on this channel once before is like, he hates when people say what they want to be paid, because the company actually has a range of what they could possibly pay them. Let them offer you a salary amount. And just give us some quick thoughts on that.
Yeah. So look, this is basic negotiating. The first person to tell their number loses. Okay. So if I'm on the phone with the recruiter, and the recruiter says, and they are going to say this, well, what's your range? What's your salary? What are your salary expectations? And I say, I'm open. What does this job pay? That's my canned response. It depends on just what does this job pay?
Say it one more time. Say,
I'm open. What does this job pay?
You guys, he just helped y'all get another $20,000 your money this year. Because I hear when I would go on interviews, people say, man, you interview well. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what's that mean? He's like, do you know how many people just struggle to answer questions, and they're struggling to come in here? They're sweating and they're like nervous. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's interesting. So, just that's a good tip right there, you guys.
Yeah, it's a powerful tip. It doesn't sound like it is, but it is. And let me tell you why. Because what you just did is, you don't know what you don't know. So let's just say my target salary is $70K. I'm winning if I'm making $70K, right? Maybe I'm making 50 right now, and I want $70K. Well, he says, how much do you want? Well, I want $70K. Oh, great. Because what you didn't know is that they were willing to pay 110. And so now that recruiter is ecstatic. And the reason he's ecstatic is because he can still mark you up on the difference. In other words, especially on a contract, he will pay you your $70K and charge that company, let's say the equivalent of $90K. And then, so he's winning even more. You're getting what you asked for, and the company is saving a little bit. So everybody's winning. But the reality is, you could have been really winning, because you could have got the $90K or even the $110K. It just depends. So by keeping your mouth closed for a little while longer until you have all the information, you can be a better negotiator. And sometimes, like she said, get 20% more out of the deal. So I'm open. What does this job pay? Oh, this job pays 90. Okay, great. Well, I'm open to that. I'm open to that, right? Or if you're not open to that, then you can state what it is. But the point is, they revealed their number first, and then you can come back, and now you know how to play your cards. So,
Hey, Sean,
yes.
could you scroll down the site and show and just show,
Oh,
because
that's
I
me.
know.
That's me.
Oh, I'm
That's me.
sorry.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
I just was putting it up there so they'd have reference.
Okay, if you scroll down the site a little bit, Ericka, that's my motto. And if you scroll down, that's me.
The model, Mr. Green.
Whatever. And then if you scroll down, there's going to be a little white section. And I want you to, okay, so right here, there's an arrow to the right. It should show.
I tell you what, I can share. I have it up in a much more better presentation way, so I can share what I have.
For sure. I mean, I could do it this way. I can do it full screen, but you guys may have a better way.
I think